ob, away from. Prepositions like ob can be tricky for a couple of reasons. One, note the alternate spelling of ah. This is the way that the preposition is spelled when it precedes a word beginning with a consonant. Another way of thinking about it, if the word that follows ob begins with a consonant, it loses its consonant, b. The other thing interesting about this preposition is that it's followed by objects in one particular case, the ablative. I'm always reminded of the fact that it's easy to remember what case follows ob, because that preposition, ob, is the beginning of the word ablative. Cado, cadere, kitty, possum, to fall. When this verb takes prepositional prefixes, the core cod changes to kid, C-I-D. That actually appears much more often in English. Celeriter, quickly. Celeriter shows us one of the ways in which Latin adjectives transform into adverbs. In the instance of the adjective celer, we add an iter suffix. You'll see this pattern play out with other adjectives as well. Iter is something that we will come to associate with the English ly. Cubiculum, cubiculi, bedroom. Today, we hear people talking about working in cubicles in offices. Generally, anyone who has a cubicle is not bragging about the amount of space they have to work in. Not coincidentally, Roman bedrooms were not very big. Descendo, descendere, descendi, descensum. I can't imagine you'll ever have problems with this verb. Descend is exactly what it means. Difficilis, difficilis, difficile. No, I didn't stutter. We used the form difficilis twice when we learned this adjective to remind ourselves that there are three basic forms of each adjective. The nominative singular in each of our three genders, masculine, feminine, and neuter. By listing this as difficilis, difficilis, difficile, we know clearly that the masculine form and the feminine form of this adjective are indistinguishable. That's not the worst thing in the world, but it's also not particularly helpful. Difficult. Dormio, dormire, dormivi, dormitum. To sleep. As college students often do in dormitories. Sleep is one of those verbs that's almost always intransitive. We'll come to learn that what that means is we should not anticipate an accusative direct object anywhere in its context. Notice the two forms of the preposition ex. They work very similarly to the two forms of the preposition ob, and they use the same rule to determine whether x gets the letter x or not. They're both followed by nouns in the ablative case. And as it happens, the meaning of x, which is out of, has something in common with the meaning of ob, which means away from. Consider the orientation of the motion from the noun that will take the ablative case. If we go away from something or out of something, we're leaving. Equus, equi, horse. Notice that in Latin, it's not uncommon to have two U's in a row. In fact, it's not uncommon to have two of any vowel in a row. A difference between Latin and English, though, is the expectation that you will give pronunciation to each of those two letters. Equus, equi, horse. Fortis, fortis, forte. Strong or brave. Consider strength is a physical characteristic, bravery, an emotional or mental one, but both of them describe a level of toughness. In or on, like the fox on the box. In can also be followed by accusative objects. Like this fox, we mean motion into or onto. We're beginning to see a pattern in how nouns of the ablative and accusative cases pair with prepositions. When paired with the ablative, the noun is located in a particular place or is leaving it. When paired with the accusative, the noun is approaching the place. Magnus, magna, magnum. Again, us, and are masculine, feminine, and neuter nominative singular forms. Mark this clearly as an adjective, and an adjective of the first, second declension. Pull together the endings that you learned for first declension nouns, second declension nouns, and second declension neuter nouns, and you have all the possible endings for this adjective. When we magnify things, we make them great. Magnus means great or large. Nomen, nominis, name. To nominate someone for a particular office or duty is, according to the Latin root, to name them as a possibility. Periculosus, periculosa, periculosum. Periculosus is the adjective dangerous. It's derived from the noun periculum, danger. We're taught as English learners to think of nouns and adjectives, verbs and adverbs as different parts of speech. It's important to think of these words in English and in Latin as instead being different uses at times of the same root. And we recognize the different use by recognizing in Latin the different ending set. The OS in periculosus is really important. It's part of what is going to show us the difference between danger and dangerous. Pessimus, pessima, pessimo. The worst, or very bad. Just as pessimists see the world as a largely negative place, we need to be able to talk about things that are really bad in any language. Going from bad to really bad is what we call a difference of degree when it comes to adjectives. Most adjectives are going to show a difference in degree via a suffix. But there are certain adjectives in Latin, as in English, that show them with an entirely different root. Coincidentally, English and Latin both do this with this idea. Consider that our word bad does not have, as a most extreme form, baddest. The word malus in Latin, bad, also doesn't take the typical suffix issimus to make it very bad. Instead, a whole new root, pessim, the worst. Look for this to happen with other very common adjectives in Latin as it does in English. Semper, always. Most people remember semper through their familiarity with Semper Fi or Semper Fidelis, the Latin motto of the U.S. Marine Corps, always faithful. Tandem, at last, or finally. Tandem is a great example of a Latin adverb that you're just going to have to learn. There aren't really any cognates. Come up with your own clever way to remember it. Maybe something involving a tandem bicycle. Maybe one day you'll finally have an opportunity to ride with another person on a bike. Via, I, the road, the way. The Romans, among other things, were enterprising engineers. They were some of the first great road builders in all of Western civilization. Road building involves all sorts of different skills coming together in the creation of a paved way. Take an opportunity at some point to dig in a little bit into the Roman practice of road building, and you'll understand why some of these roads, constructed over 2,000 years ago, are still in operation today. Vox, vocus, voice. Vox vocus is a third declension noun. We can tell that because of the is genitive singular ending that is the second form that we're introduced to. As it happens, because we form three other cases off of what we call the genitive stem, that stem ends up becoming much more prevalent when we see this noun in written Latin, and as such, is the stem more likely to produce an English word we're familiar with. VOC, think vocal. Until next time, Wale.